Alright guys, such a here again today. Hope you're doing good and enjoying all day so far. Online Call of Duty is done for the entire season. Black Ops 6 only will be played on LAN from here until the end of this particular season. But massive matchups today in terms of determining the seeding for not just Major 4 in Dallas, but also the World Championship as well. The MERC Bowl, that was the big discussion of the afternoon. What is going on with OpTic Texas from some of the losses they've had over the last couple of weekends to some of the wins that they've had, proving that yes, they can probably win this whole major, but they can potentially crash out very early on as well. What do you guys think in the comments below? Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I greatly appreciate it. These, by the way, the graphics that Osama has put together for the Falcons so far this year to kind of sum up the season. And just before we begin, wanted to thank you all for your support on the Breaking Point website, app, and products that we've come out with over the last several months. The team's been cooking everything up behind the scenes. I know that many of you guys have been asking for this, so I'll just announce it that we launched it today. Breaking Point Pro. So basically ad-free on the website, on the app, all over the place. I know that lots of you guys want more cards to unlock as well. So if you get 500 bread for interacting on the site, you can actually open a card. I just got over 500 bread after this last series, so I'll just rip a pack real quick, see what we get. Actually, you know what? It could be worse. Only commons, but yeah, Thieves, Kenny, CleanX. And anyway, you can earn bread on the site just by interacting and all this. But if you want to earn bread at a higher rate, BP Pro gives you 1,000 bread straight off the rack, plus 500 bread per week. BP Pro player verification. There's more stuff to come as well. New features of BP Pro. So anyway, if you guys want to support us, we'd appreciate it. And I know lots of you guys have been asking for it as well because you want to open more packs. So that's now officially launched as of today. All for the price of a Twitch sub. If you want to get involved, link of course in the description below. Go to the website, click get ad-free on the app as well, and I'm sure you guys will find your way there. But let's get into the series, right? Because here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Boston Breach versus Gentlemates, and well, Boston have been looking pretty shaky so far this stage. They needed a nice clean win today, and well, that's exactly what they got. Gentlemates are just hilarious, aren't they? Like, they are just terrible, and Boston slammed them game one. Awakening decided to drop a generational performance here, which he does on occasion, right? As, people even say Awakening's POV randomly once every couple of months just turns into formal. Been a very interesting year for Awakening. This is meant to be a bit of a redemption year after pretty much his first off-season ever. Like, off-season as in, didn't play very well last year on the Rokkr. Comes to Boston this year, has he been great? Not really. So, but still, the team's been okay. It's been respectable enough. But Awakening's just a player you don't really think much about, Like, he's never really top of mind in any department. He was over the last couple of years for good and bad reasons, but certainly as in, he'd get a lot of kills. People would question whether those kills are doing anything. The last year or a couple of years, it's not been quite the same story, but occasionally he will take over. This is a screenshot which clearly I put in substantially the wrong place. So we'll come back to that in a few minutes' time. This is the one that I really wanted to share because Boston ended up going on a tear. 5-3 up in the search and destroy. They closed it out. Wasn't even really close. Snoopy with the masterclass. And this is just what's confusing about this OpTic team. And of course, we're going to get into it here in a second. It's like, Gentlemate, as I said the other day, the issue is, I don't think they're actually, look, they're bad. They're very bad. But I don't think they're as bad as they look. But it was my opinion that mentally they're compromised, right? Because a team like Gentlemates, what are you really doing? You're not making champs. You're not making winners brackets. All you're doing is playing for your spot, trying to look good on the scoreboard, right? Like, that's honestly a lot of the time what it comes down to here. So that's why I thought that even if they can play better COD than they do, they won't, just for these factors. But against OpTic, they beat them. So, kind of crazy. Anyway, Boston up 2-0. They then actually win an offense. So, Gentlemates have been respectable in control. Certainly HyDra control all year. They've not been terrible at it, but they've been pretty bad. And Boston eventually get the clean 3-0 dub. So, fair play to Boston, get another 10 points on the board. Of course, we'll see the implications for this in terms of the bracket for the major when we look at everything in greater detail tomorrow. But that was an important dub for Boston just to get some momentum back on the board at a nice 3-0 fashion as well. Wake with a 1.4, Snooper with a 1.4. Cammy has had a bit of a rougher time lately, but he won't be too mad about it. FeLo, I will say, looking at this side of the story, it's not been great, right? I mean, since he's come back into the league, I guess we can look at his matches that he's played. Yeah, since he's come back from challenges, the best he ever dropped was a 0.99. So it's pretty bad. I mean, you're not going to see a player have many stints in the league where they don't drop a single one. But yeah, 0.92, 0.89, 0.99, 0.78, 0.94, 0.84, 0.8, 0.86, 0.91, 0.71, 0.71. There's some nice consistency creeping into the gameplay there. But yeah, it's obviously been a rough time for Tyler FeLo. There's been lots of talk about it just because he obviously was in challenges. He had a good team down in challenges at the start of the year. Neptune was there. He came up. Some other great players were there as well that have since got some promotions. But yeah, it's difficult to see where FeLo goes next after this season because, let's be real, the chances of him playing at the World Cup right now, given that these guys probably blow it up, they probably bring Linz back, I don't know. That's just my feeling because they'll want to do the French thing, surely. Gataga will want to do the French thing for the World Cup, given that it's so bad that it can't really get all that much worse. But the big series was OpTic versus Toronto. Very important for seeding, very important for momentum. But this coming, of course, just a couple of days after OpTic went down to Gentlemates, the team that just got 3-0 slammed by Boston, a team that OpTic also lost to. So, yeah, OpTic confusing as always. But today, they turn up in the Sunday whites, right? Game on the Sunday, they put the white jerseys on. MERC's in the Sunday whites for the first time. Of course, you already had the Sunday whites, if you want to call the Toronto Sunday whites that, back at the last major. But this was a very important series, right? We had Beans versus MERC's. A big battle on paper. Toronto trying to prove that they made the right call, getting rid of MERC's, or not getting rid of him exactly, but, you know, allowing him to walk away, bringing Beans back into the team. Of course, there's also debate about whether Beans should have stayed and Insight should have gone. Look, at the time, given the information that they had, and with the team was looking at the time, given they'd come top 3 the previous event with Beans, they were looking very promising to go one better at that major, had they not had the visa issues with Beans getting there in the first place. I think given all the information they had, totally understand what they did. Because MERC's was excellent that event, but since he's joined OpTic, I think he's proven that, you know, he might not just be excellent, but he actually might be a player that could define the next couple of years in terms of, you know, winning championships and stuff of that regard. You know, is he Simp MERC's? Maybe not. But is he very good? Yes, and I think that Toronto knew a lot of that at the major, but of course they didn't have the biggest sample size in the world and their team was doing well otherwise, so I don't think they necessarily, given, you know, the evidence available to them, made the wrong call to do what they did. But in hindsight, they may now wish they had made a different decision, seeing how it's all played out. Because over the last couple of matches, Toronto have now looked substantially more shaky. They start game 1 pretty well. Dashy has a difficult start to the map, but he then turns it around. And the key deciding force of, frankly, this whole series was Huke. Now, Huke and Shotzzy get a lot of flack as a sub-duo, and a lot of the time, I would say, for, you know, some good reason anyway. Their decision-making, certainly on LAN, and, you know, as a duo can be sometimes questionable. There is always a question as to whether you can really put Shotzzy and Huke together nowadays and, you know, hope to win championships and stuff. But Huke's honestly been really good this year. I talked about it the other day that Huke's been pretty underrated, I would say. And yes, he's Huke. He's going to make mistakes. It kind of is what it is. But the point still stands that Huke's been, by the numbers and by consistency-wise, really good. And I mean, this gunfight win is absurd. This is on JoeDeceives, one of the best players in the game right now. Joe hits a couple of shots in the side, backwards slide, spins around, guns him. Like, pretty disgusting. Okay, people are going to say, oh, it's not a turn on because it's only a 90-degree. You know, that's getting turned on as far as I'm concerned, right? Like, Joe gets absolutely slammed there with Huke only one bullet away from death. Shotzzy was playing well as well this map, and, you know, it gave them a sizable chunk of an advantage. They did make it a little bit questionable here, and Insight with a very challenging map 1. Look, I think Insight is an excellent player. I don't think you often see it too much so online. But nonetheless, it's difficult to see this Toronto team regress in the way that they have done, because at the major before that, on online qualifiers, they were looking very, very good. Many would have said the team to beat. OpTic closed it out, super close map. Honestly, it was crazy. MERC's got a lot of hill time. He knew he wasn't frying, but he got himself in the hill, which is a good way to do it there. Huke drops 41 for the dub. Very competitive map, and OpTic get out of the hill in the end to let the timer run down, so they win at 2:20, 2:16. So OpTic clutch up the game when it matters. That was a 1-0 start. We then got a very big round in the context of these comments, which is Beans versus MERC's in a 1v1. I was kind of surprised the commentators didn't really get into this, because I was pretty juiced up to see a Beans MERC 1v1, and they of course did talk about it, right? Our casters are some of the best that we have in the entire world of esports, in my opinion. But this 1v1 deserved an awful lot of attention, right? Because this was the big talking point of the series in many respects, and MERC's plays this one great. I mean, Beans, it's a tough spot for Beans, because MERC's gets a couple of bullets in him and immediately hops the bomb, which is the percentage play to make. Beans then has to worry about him getting chowled, because at the time that MERC hopped it, there's about 15 seconds left. So Beans could have got chowled and MERC could have run back to the bomb in time. Look, if you know who you're playing against in a 1v1, you probably know what they're going to do. But also, this has always been a tricky spot on Hacienda, because if you're playing in this spot and then they go to defuse the bomb, you've got to, if they are waiting for you, you've got to flood through this archway, which is, you know, you're just going to get gunned down if he's actually set up for you. I do think Beans makes a slight mistake there because he went the wrong way. We'll get to this stat in a second. But he went to the right-hand side here, and he kills Mercules, but not quite in time. Maybe if he goes left, there's, I don't know, there's probably not enough time anyway, really, for him to get this. Beans probably should have played it a bit faster. Look, Merc played it well, for sure. Gets the ninja defuse, ties it up 4-4, and then they go on to win the map from there. The control then concludes, and again, another absolute masterclass from OpTic Texas. Beans this time especially with a really difficult map, and that again was a talking point because Mercules had a real good one here on the protocol. Beans most certainly did not. And this is a pretty wild stat that that's only their second lost round of control with Mercules on the roster. So OpTic come out and they get 3-2'd by Boston last weekend. But the weekends before that with Skyz, they 3-0'd Surge. And here they are with Mercules in the roster, 3-0'ing Toronto Ultra, right? Toronto just don't get 3-0'd. It's not really something that happens, but now it seems to happen all the time. Joe looks pretty mind-blown. The OpTic boys are loving it. And, you know, fair play, because this is the big talking point. OpTic getting the dub. It's going to be huge for the confidence of these respective teams. I'm sure that Ultra are going to find a way mentally to bounce back. They often do well at this, and they say, look, we've got to be better. We will be better. Like, it's a bad weekend. It is what it is. It's online. We'll come back to LAN. But still, Toronto can't be happy about the way their stage ended, especially when you've got Mercules, who they frankly let go. JoeDeceives is going to be going to sleep tonight thinking, well, that's a little bit interesting, right? So anyway, Beans will be having his thoughts on that, I'm sure, as well. At the end of the day, LAN is what matters. But OpTic deserve a lot of credit for their performance too. They played real well today. I mean, it's just, what is going on? They lost to Gentamates the other day, and then they come back here and beat Toronto 3-0. Like, just a team which, on paper, I mean, this has always been true. Even last year it was true. OpTic had a low floor, right? And I think it's true with Shotzzy and Huke, the duo, the gameplay, like the decisions they sometimes make. This team will have a low floor. It's never going to be as high a floor as FaZe, or maybe as Thieves, those teams. But this specific OpTic iteration does seem to have unlocked the high ceiling, and that's really what matters, right? Like, I think OpTic fans, they'll take a low floor, they'll take the top 8 finishes if they're also going to win an event. And maybe there's a bit of optimism now that they could make that happen, right? Because nowadays you don't need to win a million series to win a tournament, you just have to win a handful. And OpTic right now seemingly could beat anyone in a certain series. Whether they will consistently, that's a big question. Dallas will determine it. But it was massive, of course, for OpTic getting another win, another 10 points on the board, effectively puts any of these championship qualification discussions to bed. Huke with a 1.3, Shotzzy with a 1.2, Mercules with his first kind of didn't really do much series, but you know, still with a positive BP rating, still having impact, still doing some objective work. It's a great series from OpTic and, you know, really spices things up going into whether there is an actual other contender to potentially win something at the end of the year. This was Rokkr Surge, kind of went as plans, but Kenny got to be pretty fuming about this really, because he actually started off really strong game one, yet he was getting absolutely no help from his entire team. The Nero decline, the Estriel decline. It's difficult because I expected Kenny to get the best out of those players, and they've actually got worse since he joins. Maybe it's not Kenny's fault, right? Like, it's difficult to suggest exactly what's going on. The reality is the clutch factor isn't there, but even game one, I mean, Kenny's 22 and 22, he's trying. The rest of his team aren't really doing all that much. This was crazy though, right? Kenny, not known for being a search and destroy star, gets one, gets a disgusting two-piece. I mean, look at this. He guns down like Nastie across the map and then destroys Abuzah close range. Then he picks up the final frag as well to close out the run to Neptune. So yeah, crazy stuff. And he actually continued this with Rokkr somehow putting together a search and destroy run where they dominate and Kenny goes 11-0 for the dub. I mean, look at this guy. He's absolutely buzzing with it. 11-0 for the dub on the first map we've seen all season, by the way. The first flawless map all season comes on the last day of the qualifiers. But it's Kenny of all players given his search and destroy to deliver it. So that was pretty mind-blowing. But after that, it was normal service resumes and Surge took over some of the game modes. They bounced back after a difficult couple of weeks in control. They then eventually win the final hardpoint as well. And Rokkr's dreams are effectively dead in the water right there. Kenny nearly top ranks the entire lobby, but it wasn't good enough in the end. Those are the overall numbers. Very much interested to your thoughts, as always, in the comments below. We're going to talk about a very interesting bracket indeed tomorrow morning. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.